All right, such an inspirational story. Okay, Marcus, I'm gonna get right to it. So many people, this is the battle of a lifetime for them. In society, a lot of times we focus on it as an aesthetic issue, but it really is a health issue, and it's one that you've dealt with your entire life.
All my life, pretty much.
When did you realize that you were a heavy kid?
You know, it's probably started about, about 12 years old. Just kind of noticed I was getting looked at funny, and friends would be, they would just kind of laugh at me when I'd go outside or have my shirt off, and I started getting self-conscious, But I was a preacher's kid, right?
Yeah. So you're kind of in that fishbowl anyway.
Yeah. So I was a great singer. Dad would use us for the band, and we would be there doing the altar songs. So I just started becoming really good at singing, and just didn't really, I was like, hey, I'm not going to be an athlete. I'm going to be a singer.
Right. And you thought you could hide behind that.
I sure did. And I went through high school. Would win awards, and I was the star singer and that kind of deal. So it was just kind of like, hey, this is the artsy kid. This is the kid that's funny, and I had to use other things to be.
Well, and I did the same thing. My sense of humor came from being a very overweight kid in 6th grade, and you make people laugh, and then you were not a threat to anybody, and you were everybody's friend.
Oh, everybody's friend. They wanted, oh, this guy could sing great, and that's just what I was. So I kind of just built, that's kind of who I built my life around.
Right.
And it was so good. It was before really the internet was really going on. So I was like, hey, I'm going to make it in the singing world. I tried. Then all of a sudden, babies came and wife, and I was like, oh, I got to go to work.
Well, your largest weight was 489 pounds.
Yeah.
Obviously, there was something going on there.
Yeah.
Was it a relationship with food?
It was kind of like, whenever you're big, or whenever you have a problem, you keep going back to the same thing that makes you big.
Right.
So when I'm talking to people that do have a problem with that, or any kind of problem, it's like, hey, that makes me feel good. A Coke makes me feel good. A drink, and I would just find myself, I was just drinking Sprites and Cokes, and then I would go eat the fanciest meal I could get, and I would just, because it made me feel satisfied. And I never knew the satisfaction you could get from doing healthy things, right? So because it just wasn't inside of me.
Right.
So
it was so many people. Everyone can relate to what you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean,
it's food.
You feel like, hey, I'm just having a bad day. You go get a Coke, and then all of a sudden, that tastes so great.
System,
oh yeah,
right?
yeah.
Almost like a drug addiction.
Yeah,
in a sense.
And then you just keep going back to that feeling, and then you're going to get the Route 44, and you're going to,
How many times did you look at yourself and say, I got to go on a diet? How many times did you try?
Oh, I tried so many times, just because you go to functions with your kids at the school, and their friends were making fun of them, and they'd come, the kids would come home and say, Dad, he called you fat, or what are those things?
There's things you couldn't do with your kids.
And you're like, oh, I couldn't. There was so much I missed. I can remember when I started walking 20 minutes a day. I had gastric bypass, right? And the friend of mine that said, hey, Marcus, I'm dying because I have cancer.
Yeah. If you're alive, you can do something about your situation, and your friend could not do anything about his situation, so he challenged you.
He said, I'm dying because I have cancer. And you're dying because of your choice. I would do anything to be you. So you got to promise me that you're going to try, because your family needs you.
And I'm going to go back to that, because I know so many people who are battling with a food addiction and battling with being overweight, and what makes them feel worse is when someone says you have a choice.
Yeah.
And so you say yes, you have a choice.
Yeah. And so I took his challenge, and he passed away. Chuck Delio passed away, and I took his challenge, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to live for my family. So I can remember walking 20 minutes a day, right? That's my first goal.
Yeah.
I'm going to walk 20 minutes, and I thought I was going to die, right? And I can remember that escalating, for about a month and a half, and I said, you know what, there's a telephone pole. I'm going to try to jog from this telephone pole to that telephone pole. And I did, and I turned around, and my son, my 16-year-old's with me. And it's the first time I'd ever ran with my 16-year-old. So all those things start sinking in, and you're like, you know what? I've missed so much.
But you found something else that made you feel good.
And it was life, you know what I'm saying? Because you're like, well, I don't need a Coke. I need to run with my son, you know? And then you segment that out, and you start, I started being successful. I started getting these small goals. I started like, hey, you know what? I'm going to try to do a triathlon. And my buddy's like, can you swim? And I was like, you have to swim? And he's like, yeah, you have to swim. I'm like, well, you know, I kind of float pretty good in a pool, you know. And,
but yeah, that goal of reaching the telephone pole, you've the sprint triathlon, the Olympic triathlon, the Ironman triathlon.
I did an Ironman last year, Texas Ironman last year. A year and a half after being 500 pounds, I come across the finish line of the Texas Ironman. It took me 16 hours and 31 minutes. And, you know, that's a long day for anyone. So, but it's a long day to think that
Wow.
Someone would say, hey, you know what? The guy you saw in the first of this segment, when I pulled, how could he do an Ironman? That's not a 10-year idea. That was a year and a half before.
That's incredible.
Before I ran across the finish line of an Ironman.
You have the Ironman logo tatted on your calf.
I do.
Right?
Yes, I do.
You've raised over $100,000 for the Ironman Foundation.
Yep, I have. So I get to go to Kona in October to participate in the World Championship in Hawaii.
Yeah.
And I'm just doing it because I want to prove to the person that's sitting on a couch like I was. I had to get cushions replaced every 2 years because I just watched every Netflix, and that was
you wore out the cushions.
Yeah, that was sort of like the Coke. You know, the TV was sort of like the Coke.
Well, so many people who are, you're right, at home watching, thinking, I got to get a hold of this, but I can't. I just can't. You're saying, yes, you can. It looks like there's a mountain in front of them.
Yeah.
A mountain to climb.
Oh, it's a mountain.
Well, speaking of a mountain to climb, you've climbed mountains.
I did. I've climbed two 14,000-foot peaks in Colorado. You know, I came, you know, the thing about it is after I crossed that finish line, I said, I'm going to go. I'd always been to the mountains, and I'd always took a Jeep to the top of the mountain. I was like, after this Ironman, I'm going to climb up a mountain. So I climb up a mountain. All of a sudden, my wife calls. She says, hey, there's a hurricane out in the Gulf. And I was like, oh, I need to get home. You know, I started kind of worrying about it. So I came home. And here's the crazy thing that people don't think. People think, oh, this guy's got healthy and he's running and he's trying to inspire and he's trying to do these things and do something new every day. I'm going to be like him. But you never know who you're going to help, because here's the deal. I'm on top of the mountain, and then all of a sudden the hurricane hits. And then, you know, I run through the neighborhood the day before it floods, because we live close to an area that gets affected. And then I'm sitting there and I'm going, all these people are trying to get out of their homes. So I went and got 2 kayaks, and we rescued 100 people.
And before, you could not have rescued anybody. You would have been the person being rescued.
Oh, yeah, and if they would have had to rescue it, it would have been an ordeal. So, and then the coolest thing is that, you know, you're sitting there and, you know, you're in tears half the time just rescuing people, because here I am, I can't even get out of the couch, and I'm pulling people, I'm helping people in wheelchairs and the boats, and I'm not a rescuer, I'm just a normal guy. You know, I was one of the guys everybody talks about. I'm like, I'm a nobody, but I'm just helping. And then the next day, my family goes, Dad, what else can we do? So we go tear out carpet, people wouldn't even know. And then like 3 days later, because of the Ironman, I made a relationship. This guy calls me and says, hey, I can feed 1,000 people a day. Where can we go? And I was like, well, you know, you need to go talk to my church. And I don't know. And he says, dude, and I was trying to shuffle him to Mattress Mac. I was trying to get him to, I was just trying to help this guy. And he was like, dude, you're Marcus Cook. If you've done what you could do, let's just go do it.
You can do miracles.
And we went to a parking lot off Westheimer, and we fed over 8,000 people in 5 days.
And again, the point being, you could not have even done that.
And you don't know who you're affecting whenever you're this big guy. You think it's all about you. But I changed my health.
Or you think you don't matter.
Yeah,
you do matter.
And you're the only one it's affecting. That's what you're thinking. You're thinking, hey, I'm just hurting me.
Yeah.
But I turned around, and my son's done a marathon. I've turned around my wife.
You've helped friends cross the Ironman.
My wife, my relationship with my wife got better. You know.
I want to wrap up with this, because when gastric bypass surgery came out, or the sleeve or whatever, a lot of folks said, that's it, we're done. It doesn't mean you're done. It's a great tool for you to work with, but you still have to decide to live, and still have to realize how you have to eat, treat yourself.
Yeah, there's so many things that happen. You know, I had the gastric bypass. People say that's an easy way. It's really a hard way, because I do so much endurance sports.
Right.
You know, the nutrition aspect is whack now. You
the
know,
food that you eat now has to count.
I've got, you know, so, and then I had all the excess skin, and then Franklin Rose heard my story. Dr. Franklin Rose,
Rose.
And he took, you know, he did the stomach surgery on me, and you know, it's just the things that you have to go through to be back normal. It's a hard journey, but it's not impossible. And so you know, my saying is, impossible is a dare.
All right. And by the way, I know Dr. Rose too. Wink. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
When you look at your story and you think something is impossible, now we realize that it is not.
Yeah,
if you're alive, you can do something about your situation.